Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the UCAN Talk Show. I am your host, Zach, and today I'm here with two wonderful guests. To my left here is performance coach Joe Staub. Joe has worked with collegiate teams from the University of Connecticut, the Kansas Jayhawks, to military professionals, to all the above. Joining us in Dallas, Texas right now is world-renowned nutritionist Karin Hosenfeld. Karin has worked from everyone from people on the PGA Tour, Olympians, and different individuals and athletes every day. Today, we're going to talk about how UCAN can be used in many different ways, and the big question that we get asked every single day, which is how to use UCAN. And for us, and what makes the UCAN community so great is that we come from a diverse background of different communities, different demographics, and we're all different. The same way that Meb trains for his marathon may be different than the way that Joe trains or the way that I train. So we're all different. What makes us great is that we all share these common stories and these goals of creating our best selves and striving to be greater. And without further ado, let's get the talk started. I'll go to Karin first. So Karin, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I wish I had an amazing UCAN background like you guys. We got to coordinate this next time. I didn't get the memo. We got to coordinate next time. But yeah,
all Zach.
You're right. It is the top asked question. How do I use UCAN? What products do I use? And there's so many different ways depending on what kind of athlete you are, whether you're just an everyday athlete, just trying to get through life, or an elite athlete looking to very fine-tune your performance. So we're really excited to be talking about this. This is a great topic tonight.
And Joe, you probably get this question a lot too. How do I use UCAN for me? How do I use it? What are you telling athletes generally?
So we were actually talking before we started. That's the thing we probably all get asked the most is, how do I actually use the product? And from the athletic standpoint, mainly at UCAN, I'm dealing with team sports, college professional team sports. So the biggest question there is not only how and when do I use it, but how do I get people to take it? How do I mix it? What ways can I mix it? What can I mix it with? How do I actually prepare it beyond just buying it? That's kind of the other thing we're going to get into as well.
Great. So I guess my first question is to you, Karin. You work with such a wide variety of different individuals, different athletes. So when you get that question, how do I use UCAN? You've probably got it 1,000 times. What are 5 different ways that you've told maybe 5 different people that same question? How do I use UCAN?
It's a really great question. When I first got introduced to UCAN and I found out about it, it was about 7 years ago. And it was through Bob Seebahar's blog, and Bob has been an amazing resource for UCAN in the past and still is a huge advocate of the product. He described using UCAN for people that have issues like GI issues. They just really can't, go run or work out with anything in their stomach. That was me. And also, I suffer from hypoglycemia. So imagine that. You're going starved into a workout. How long are you going to last? And so I tried it myself, absolutely loved it. And I thought, if there's any endurance athletes that walk in my door to come see me for nutrition counseling, then I'm going to tell them about UCAN. Well, what happened was I started to hear back from endurance athletes saying, wow, I used it on my bike or I used it on my long runs, and I wasn't hungry. I had great energy. I felt amazing. And when I was done, I didn't have the normal cravings that I would for eating, let's say, unhealthy foods. So I thought, well, who else might be able to use UCAN? And then it just spanned across the board. It's controlling blood sugar and keeping your blood sugar stable, so I could use it with diabetics. It's controlling cravings and hunger, so I could use it with people that would come to see me and say, I've tried 7 or 8 things for weight loss. I don't know what to do. So I'd use UCAN with them. I worked for a year as a contracted person with the NFL Players Association. This is 5,000 guys. They're current and released and former players. And these are guys, a lot of them need to lose weight in the off season. Even, the current players, they're coming in the off season trying to lose 30 or 40 pounds. So it just had such a wide variety of people I could use it with. And then I started working with USA boxers and Taekwondo athletes and their cutting practices and weight management, cycling up and down with their weight. And it's just got such a wide variety of uses. This is just a handful.
So you talked about, the endurance athletes at one point, and a lot of people, especially this time of year, you're training for the Boston Marathon. You're looking ahead into the fall. You're starting to get ready, get those miles in. You've probably worked with a bunch of different endurance athletes. And one time, a big question we get sometimes is, I got these samples from my friend. She uses it 30 minutes beforehand, makes a gel with it while she goes along. But I tried that same tactic, and I had better results when I did it 45 minutes beforehand. Why do some people have different preferences and different results with timing and just in taking the UCAN in?
Every person's also different, so we're talking about how long it will last, because they want a recipe like how long exactly is this going to last me, and it depends on how metabolically efficient you are. So those of us, I've noticed, tell me if I'm wrong, Zach, but those of us who've worked at UCAN the longest and use UCAN the longest, it seems to last a little bit longer. I'll do a scoop of UCAN. And if I'm not exercising, I last about 6 hours on a scoop of UCAN. It's crazy. But I find that the more often that you use it, the better. But it also depends when you're talking about timing which is 30 to 45 minutes before. It depends on your gastric emptying. So some people empty the contents of their stomach quicker than others, and they don't want to be sloshy out there when they're running or lots of different sports. You don't want to be sloshy when you're figure skating or, gymnastics or tennis, many different sports. So it just depends on you and how long it's going to last you. And I like to tell people you can build it up, but you always play with it. And at the end of the day, the last thing I thought was important. Try it during training, not during performance or competition. And if you try it enough, you will get the sweet spot and you'll know exactly how long it lasts you.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing is that testing and that trial, because your body's never going to lie to you. No one knows yourself better than your own body. And just by continually training and trying different things, you will find that best result for you. And you will find what works best. I mean, that body is not going to lie to you. So, Joe, we've talked just about endurance athletes and how that's a big part of our community. That's how we started, was in the endurance community. How did you hear about UCAN and translate that into, training with the military, into collegiate sports teams and basketball and football?
So as I mentioned on previous podcasts and webinars we've done, I actually used the product before it was commercialized when I was at UConn with Dr. Volek and Dr. Kramer and some of the exercise science, exercise phys group that was there. So I've known about it since the beginning. And fortunately, being surrounded with those people and having the knowledge of how to use it in different ways, we were given, I was an athlete, I was a decathlete, and we were given it and said, hey, try this, see what you feel. And we just felt different. We didn't really know. I was an undergrad. I didn't have the knowledge myself to even know what I was doing.
It's magic.
And yeah, exactly. It was like, hey, like I felt better. It was better, so over time, as I both learned myself and then went out into the field as a strength coach, I was able to understand what UCAN could do, and then so when working with athletes or anyone really, and I'm sure Karin, it's kind of the same thing you just said, and I'll say it my way, I look at it in three ways. Is it a nutrition strategy? Are you using it as a carbohydrate in your nutrition? Are you using it to fuel exercise and performance or training or whatever you're actually going to do? And then the last one, and it's kind of a weird one that people don't always think of because it's a term people use in different ways, recovery. If between the hours of 8 p.m. and 1 a.m. dealing with the college population, if they're out eating God knows what, drinking God knows what, whether it's coffee or something they shouldn't be drinking, and they're putting a lot of inflammatory things in their system, and then they're trying to go to bed, well, if they have a UCAN snack bar or they have a shake, they fuel their brain, they're not getting the cravings, they're not needing that cup of coffee to stay awake, they're not needing, or they don't want that piece of pizza at midnight when their roommate orders a pizza. Well, they go to bed with better quality nutrition. They wake up feeling better because they didn't burn their system out all night trying to process whatever it was they put in their body. So those are kind of the three big things that I used it for in that in the spaces I worked in, which again, I just said the same thing Karin said a different way.
And you know what that is, though? That's so interesting, and it's absolutely the foundation of what UCAN is that it's steady blood sugar. And most people, no matter what walk of life they are or what age they are, they don't know that they're on this blood sugar roller coaster. They wake up in the morning, they eat whatever they want to for breakfast. Usually it's high carb. You know, go to a hotel, you know, breakfast buffet and you'll see it's all carbs. And their, you know, blood sugar shoots up and then it crashes at what? 10 a.m., right? And then people are starting to get hungry, looking at their watch. Is it time to eat lunch yet? They might grab something unhealthy from the vending machine or whatever from work or school. Then they eat something high carb again for lunch to get them by that little bump. Your 4 o'clock in the afternoon is another little bump to get you over to dinner. And it could be, you know, something bigger than just a bump. You're eating cookies or things that are just helping you to get that sugar high. And you're up and down and up and down. You can, especially the way that I've recommended over the years, which is 1 to 2 servings a day, not just when you're exercising, but other times in the day. And I'm sure we'll talk about that too. Just helps you to give more and more and more stable energy hours. And that good feeling you were talking about, Joe, and you were saying, we didn't know what it was, it just made us feel good, is that everyday feeling that people can have of just this really nice, clean, stable energy. You put that to work in an athletic population, and suddenly you have a good, clean fuel source as well.
So Karin, you mentioned using it perhaps once or twice a day is a general good guideline for it. We just got a question from the audience that pertained to a marathon, and it also, I think, would be applicable to just general fitness and health. Could you overuse UCAN?
Well, of course I'm going to say no. UCAN is an all-natural energy source. It was created originally for infants. One of the co-founders' son, Jonah, actually was born with glycogen storage disease. That's a mouthful, but basically he had to be fed every 2 hours in order just to survive. So we know that, you know, and they went on an 8-year quest just to find a starch, and that's why we call it super starch, that could do this and could last long enough. Currently, Jonah takes a couple of scoops of UCAN at night, and he's able to sleep through the night. So when we're looking at and he's, you know, 17 now, so we're looking at a population where you can use it multiple times throughout the day. It's all natural. I like to point out on the back of a UCAN packet or tub that there's a nutrition facts label on it. So it's not a supplement. It would say supplement facts on it. It actually comes from a food source and is less processed than oatmeal. So when people ask me, you know, could they take too much of it? Really, it would just boil down to the number of calories you're having per day. Are you having any other carb sources as well? Are you getting in the nutrition that you need in general? And that you're not trying to out supplement a poor diet. So we definitely want to encourage a really nice, clean, healthy diet, high fiber foods, clean, natural proteins, and using UCAN as well. It definitely fits in there.
I think too, yeah, and just even during exercise and while you're running too, it's hard to overuse it because it's so gentle in the stomach. Sometimes, you know, you can put too much water in your stomach and you may cause issues that way. So that's why it comes down to training and trying and practicing that way. You know, I consider myself just a self-experimenter, always trying different things, especially when it comes to UCAN. You know, I've done the whole thing, empty stomach runs for 20 miles. I've done UCAN 6 times in that 20 miles, making it into gels, taking full shakes. And I've noticed that you certainly can't overuse it in a run. I notice during running, sometimes the most applicable way to use it is that every 90 minutes, 30 minutes is just maybe a little too much. You're stopping and going. You want to get into that zone. You want to get into that UCAN feeling where you're feeling it, you know, every 90 minutes and you got the good feeling you and you're going to finish strong. So Joe, when you're working with athletes in the gym or in different facilities, what's your general guidelines for starting with an athlete in nutrition wise?
So just big picture general guidelines. So
yeah, if you're going to work with, you got a team of 6 athletes right now. You know, are you giving them the same stuff and say, hey, 30 minutes beforehand, we're going to do a scoop of UCAN, or are you going to break it down for the athletes based on who they are and how they perform?
Yep. So just like a training program, people don't realize that just like you have individual training programs, you know, people throw the word sport specific around. Nutrition is just like that. You can make it as specific or general. So in terms of athletes, most of the time in the college setting, when I had 18 to 22-year-olds, not a lot of them had a ton of nutrition knowledge. So I kept things very general at first, just to give them good guidelines. So, if they didn't eat breakfast, it was eat something for breakfast. And then once they consistently ate something for breakfast, we could then get into things like, hey, the quality of what you eat matters. And that's where we could start to include, because they would know the difference. If you go, or people listening, you don't eat breakfast, and then all of a sudden you start eating something, it's going to change how you feel. Now, if you eat a ton of sugar, just like Karin said, you're going to spike and crash eventually. Whereas if you have a better balanced meal, you're going to feel a little better versus having that high sugar. So as you go from no food knowledge to at least trying to do the right things, you then have the understanding of its impact. Once you have that understanding, that's where you can start using things like UCAN to really get people to understand the difference between the bowl of Rice Krispie treats or Fruity Pebbles, which people think is a good breakfast, but it's not because it's so much sugar, versus giving them something like a UCAN in a shake or a UCAN bar, or adding UCAN into yogurt or something like that, where it's a better quality breakfast because they understand the difference between not having something and having it versus having an even better version of something. That was kind of where I would start.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people will have something. People might eat something like that and say, well, at least I had breakfast. But what we're looking for is, you don't know how bad you felt until you feel good for a change. So try, UCAN protein, a little bit of peanut butter and some unsweetened vanilla almond milk. Throw that together, maybe some greens as well in there. And you'll be amazed at how you can start your day with steady energy instead of those ups and downs like you were mentioning, Joe.
There was quite a few times I've run into nutritionists in the college world who would recommend Pop-Tarts to kids. And
no kidding.
Yeah, Pop-Tarts. And you would think that's like the worst thing ever. And their whole point was, we just need them to get them to eat something. Because if I can get them in the habit, and that's where, something like UCAN, especially to me working with athletes, just like training and practice are habits. You go a certain way, you have a certain mentality. Your nutrition, and I mentioned it before, you can be specific with your nutrition for the individual. It's a habitual thing. You need to have good habits. So if you start your day by eating breakfast, and like Karin just said, eating what a better quality breakfast is, you're going to feel and notice improvement, not just that day, but over time and every day, every week. And it becomes that habit where all of a sudden it's just part of your training regimen. So for athletes, especially with UCAN, we taught them about it like it was part of their training regimen. It was no different than practice. It was no different than the weight room. It was part of their regimen. And for athletes, that mindset makes a lot more sense and they can buy into it a little quicker. Whereas, for just an everyday person, it's something to include to improve nutrition versus a regimented thing.
And when you're working with an athlete from a performance standpoint, does the way that a person just functions athletically, like for example, do they have more slow twitch muscles? Are they more of a quick burst athlete? Is that the way that they perform? Do you then alter the way that you would give them UCAN? And would that be, would you give a bigger person 2 scoops? And 2 scoops can also mean 2 packets in this instance. A packet is generally a scoop for the UCAN in the tubs. But would it alter based on someone's, metabolic, genetic code, or just the way they perform on individually?
So, yes. So how much? Everyone is different, and we've discussed that. Everyone has their own goals. So when I looked at how I would use UCAN for any particular sport, well, what are the demands of the sport? What kind of fueling strategy are they using currently? So I'll give you a quick example, right? In college sports, you get a team meal before you play. So 3 to 4 hours before your competition, you're generally eating a pretty good meal. And most schools are fortunate to have some kind of resource to tell them what they should have. So, I'll use soccer for an example. So 3 or 4 hours, they probably have some type of vegetable, carbohydrate, protein, whether it's chicken or beef or whatever, and they're able to eat a decent meal. So they're in a decent energy state, at least you hope, at least the goal, going into their competition. So in that sense, in most soccer teams who use UCAN in the collegiate world have half a shake or a bar, depending on preference. Some people like drinking something, some people like eating something, before, about in the locker room, about 30 minutes before, because they had that meal. They may not need that full shake right before because they did fuel their bodies. Now they have the other half of that at halftime because at this point they've expended energy, they've put out effort, and they need something to kind of top off the tank and keep going. So that's in terms of actual competition, because there is some control to the food they get. It's a little different. But to go back to some of the other parts of the question you asked, and jump this over to Karin in a second, individual metabolic efficiency determines how much of anything you need. So not only is what you're doing and what your fueling strategy is, but how intense the exercise you're doing is, and how good you are metabolically matters. So I'll switch this to Karin and throw it to you, Karin. Depending on metabolic efficiency, say someone's very highly good, in terms of their ability to metabolically burn fat versus someone who is very poorly efficient, and that can be because they're sugar addicts or, whatever the cases you may have seen are. How do you recommend dosing UCAN?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I was down at Lifetime Fitness this week in San Antonio talking to some of their trainers and working with them. And this question came up too, which was, when you take someone who's deconditioned. So there might be people out there watching this, even the recording as well, that might want to, start an exercise program. It's almost bikini season, as we hear all the time in the media. So they're thinking, well, I really want to get out there and I really want to try something, but I haven't walked a mile in 10 years. And when you're talking about someone that's deconditioned or not as adept as, say, as an elite athlete that you and I are used to working with as well, then you're talking about someone who doesn't have as good control with their glycogen stores in their muscles because their muscles maybe aren't as fine-tuned as someone who's used to not only, let's say, running every day or doing CrossFit every day or doing some sort of workout every day, but they're also not used to having a fuel source that's efficient as well. So this is why I mentioned when you do UCAN longer, then you have a better fuel source and your body gets more used to using it. So when we talk about metabolic efficiency, that's just a fancy way of saying how fast you burn through stuff. So typically, if you're talking about someone who works out pretty vigorously, right, and you see them, they could be, deadlifting 405 pounds at the gym or, running at a pretty good clip and passing you up. Those people are usually burning through UCAN if they're using it often and are used to using it about, a scoop or a packet every 90 minutes or so. It's kind of a rough estimate that I tell people to kind of judge by that. So if you're doing a workout at the gym, for example, you're going to be lifting for about an hour or 90 minutes or so, probably one scoop along with one scoop of protein powder or our UCAN with protein, you'll be good to go for, one serving of that. If you're going to go, and some people do much, much longer, and you're going to be there for hours and hours at the gym or running, for example, or outdoors now that the weather's starting to get nice, then you might want to double up on your UCAN before you go or have some, at the halfway point. This all depends on many factors, what your caloric needs are overall. If you're talking about a smaller stature woman who's, 120 pounds and she's just doing a group fitness class for an hour, then she probably doesn't need to double up on UCAN. So this is where we say that we really want to play with that application and just see how long it lasts you.
Yeah, so you mentioned, your typical dosing strategy. Now, it's another question we get all the time is, what's the ideal ratio? A lot of times I tell people that it's just superstarch by nature. It's just an ingredient. It's a food product. You can mix it into your oatmeal if you want to. You can eat it raw if you want to. Water's just a great vehicle to get into your body. It doesn't matter how much or how little, and that's going to come down to your preference. What do you generally tell people, Karin, when they talked about what's the ideal ratio? How much UCAN should be taken with X amount of water?
Well, I'm going to tell you mine, and then I want to hear yours because I want to hear how you guys mix. And I know you said that you have done the gel too, yeah. Zach. So this is a huge question too. So let's talk about that dosing. So the cool thing about UCAN is, I talked with an Ironman athlete the other day, and he was telling me, he said, when I do a whole gel or goo, I feel sick to my stomach. I can't even do it. I have to do a tiny little bit and throw the packet away. The great thing about UCAN is you can mix it with as little water or as much water as you want to, because the effects are going to be the same on your stomach. It's nice and easy on the stomach, no GI issues, which again was one of the first reasons that I came to UCAN. And the first time I tried it, this kind of funny story, I was so like, if this works, I am all in. I told you I had the issues with hypo, low blood sugar, and not being able to tolerate food beforehand. So I was so excited to try UCAN. It was hardcore for me at first because I mixed it with 12 ounces of water, and it took forever for me to get it down. It's like, how long is this going to take? And I just really want to go. At the time, it was a run, and I'm not a runner. I more like to lift weights and ride my bike. But I did it, and when I did have that first run, it wasn't a 3-mile run. It was like, hey, I could stay on and keep going. And I think I ended up doing 6 miles that day, and I was sold. But then I decided I'm going to do a little less UCAN, or a little less water to my UCAN. So I use about 6 ounces nowadays, unless I'm going to mix it with any extra protein, or if it's a packet that has protein in it, a UCAN plus protein, then I'll do maybe 8 ounces. But to me, when you start doing UCAN, it's a signal when you down it that you are ready to go. It is a mental thing, like, I've done my UCAN, now I'm about to kill it. So it's just one of those things for me. I just like to down it and get going. So how do you guys use it? How do you guys mix it?
So I'll give you my 3 main ways that I use UCAN. My it kind of comes into 3 different practices. The first one, if I'm going to the gym, or if I'm just want to get my UCAN in, I like to do Cocoa Delight, my favorite flavor, with about 6, 7, 8 ounces of water, somewhere in that cold water, shake it up real well, and that gets me through. When I'm doing the running though, I have found that I perform best continuously taking the gels. During my running training, I reached out to Greg McMillan, who is a phenomenal running coach. Yeah. And he mentioned at one point during your training, I want you to bonk. I want you to go empty stomach, just water, and see what happens. And I'm not a runner, but I was self-experimenting with the running, and for the first time in my life, when I hit this wall, this infamous bonk that we always hear about,
horrible.
It was one of the most excruciating things ever. Like, I was running, like, I wanted to just, I think I was on a path too. I think I was like yelling at trees and stuff. It was really bad. Just your brain went numb, your legs were there, like started cramping up. It was a terrible experience. So I was just like, I can never bonk again. So I developed my fueling strategy for the New York Marathon in 2017, which was, and this is my strategy. I don't know if it worked for you, but it worked light years for me, and I recommend it to everyone. It was 2 scoops of Cocoa Delight 30 minutes before the run. And then I took a gel, which was a tropical orange packet with 1.5 ounces of water, which I mixed up the night before. So you have to do a little bit of effort.
What'd you put it in?
I kept it in a little sandwich bag, just something you might get from like a little Ziploc sandwich bag.
All right.
Put it in the fridge, put it in my pocket, running shorts.
And you mixed it with how much water, you said?
1.5 to 2. You know, I didn't really measure the water. I kind of just put it in the bag and then just keep playing around with it until you get that good substance that you want. And I've noticed I do that every 75 to 90 minutes. I just feel golden. And I remember the first time that I tried the gels when I was doing it, I literally felt like I was cheating. Like I was getting through something. Like this shouldn't be this easy at this point. Like I know I've been training, but I feel way too good. And that was honestly one of my first UCAN moments where I said, wow. And then my third way I would use UCAN is more as a protein, or actually more of a protein / just a shake at night. Sometimes you're craving those, that late night you're craving some ice cream or anything like that. So Joe over here has created the best recipe. He can actually, I don't know what's in it, but he makes it all the time. And it's kind of like a dessert shake. So I use that as recovery or just when I'm craving something sugary.
Well, tell us what's in it, Joe. I want to know.
So for me, in terms of water, so having been in the strength conditioning performance world and, being a young kid, wanting to be big and strong and everything, I've drank every protein mix powder stuff under the sun. And for me, it was always, Karin, just like you said, the absolute minimum amount of water to get it down so I could get after it. So when I drink UCAN to train and whatever I'm doing for training, I mix usually about 4 to 6 ounces of cold water. I always recommend cold water. No one ever wants to drink warm anything. The colder, the better, in my opinion. And I actually use a small shaker bottle, just because with like a full-size shaker bottle, if you're only putting that much water in, to me, I'm just a waste having a big one. So I use my little shaker bottle. I'll put a scoop to a scoop and a half, depending on how long my exercise is going to be, with about 4 to 6 ounces. Shake it, and then just plug and chug. And even though it's a little thicker, I don't mind it because, like I said, I've had so many bad things over the years that like I love the taste of UCAN. I think it tastes good because I've had so many ones that were terrible. So that's how for performance. If I'm at the desk or I'm on the phone or in meetings and I just need something to get me through because I know I'm not going to eat, I know I'm not going to have time to get a full meal. Aside from the snack bars, I usually try, I probably every day in the office, I come down and steal a bar from the stock room. Huge fan of an 8-second microwave. Take it out of the wrapper of peach and cinnamon. I think peach and cinnamon, when you warm them up just a little bit, just a couple seconds, are phenomenal. Personal opinion. Otherwise, my secret recipe recently has been.
Take notes. This is a good one.
This one, I'm proud of this. I'm sure someone else has done it.
Get your pens out.
Yeah. So whoever did this first, take credit because I'm sure someone did. If I'm mixing it with water or I don't have a blender, I use PB2, the powdered peanut butter, because it's just easier to shake versus, regular peanut butter in just a shaker bottle is tough to mix. So PB2, so 1 tablespoon PB2. Then I do a half scoop Cinnamon Delight UCAN. Then 3/4 of a scoop Cocoa Delight. And I mix that with just a little more water than I usually do, probably about 8 ounces of water, just because you have the PB2 in there, you have 2 different types of UCAN in there. You want to be able to make sure it mixes well. You don't want it clumpy and chunky. Like I said, for performance, clumpy and chunky, plug and chug and go. But if I'm sitting at the office, want a casual drink, I actually just drank it. That's how I do it. The ratio was literally just me playing around with it. I probably made in the last 2 months 20 or 30 versions of it with more PB2, more cinnamon, more Cocoa Delight. I personally like it with just a little Cocoa Delight with a little cinnamon to add the cinnamon flavor with the peanut butter, and more Cocoa Delight because I like chocolate. But I did try one day more cinnamon and less cocoa, and it was good, but I'm just a cocoa guy like Zach is. So that's my secret recipe, which if anyone out there, if you have a blender and you can use regular peanut butter, I've used regular peanut butter. I've used almond butter. It's great. Just again, resources. If you have a blender, what are those little the little single serve blenders, the infomercial always used to be. You know what I'm talking about? One of those bullet. The magic bullet. That's it.
Shake it up well.
Yeah, if you have a magic bullet, you can add in like peanut butter or nut butter. But If you just have a shaker bottle, use the PB2 or another type of product like that because it mixes a lot better.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned the bars too. I don't know if you mentioned both the cinnamon bar and the peach bar. Cinnamon tasting like a cinnamon roll when you heat it up a little bit. Peach.
Oh yeah, very much so. That's why I do it, Karin. That's why I do it.
Right. I'm down south, so peach is like peach cobbler, and we love that down here. And then the coffee bar. And by the way, these are things that as of right now, from March to November in Texas, we just leave those things in our car and they warm up. But the coffee bar is fantastic those are great too. Both of those are for weight loss or kind of, weight cutting, or even athletes or just everyday people weight cutting who are doing an hour after dinner when you need a dessert and you have a little bit of a sweet tooth and you want something. I've used that successfully with lots of different people, athletes and everyday people. But also the coffee bar, which doesn't have the caffeine that you would think. It's about the caffeine of a, decaf cup of coffee. But if you heat that one up, it has the consistency. Don't know if you've tried it, but it has the consistency of cookie dough.
Ooh.
And when you do, it is absolutely hard to resist. It is night and day different than just a regular coffee bean bar. They're great, they taste great, but if you warm them up a little bit, 8 to 10 seconds in a microwave or hot Texas car, then yeah, consistency of cookie dough, try it out.
Nice.
So yeah, so you mentioned bars being as kind of that sugar tooth craving that can get you through. How have you seen the athletes you work with utilize bars during training?
I have used it both in Major League Baseball off season, which, the pitchers show up for off season training and they need to lose 30 or 40 pounds. And I've also used it with retired NFL players who, these guys are artificially, especially, the O-line and D-line, they're artificially keeping on 80 to 100 pounds for their position. And now they don't need that weight anymore. And not only that, now they're retiring for football, heart disease, diabetes. So they need to take off that weight suddenly. And, these are guys that are 6'5", 390 pounds. They're not your average person. And so I do tell the average person, listen, if my guys who are weighing that much can do this simple tactic after dinner, and suddenly their cravings are managed because there is still, 10 to 15 grams of superstarch in these bars, and now their blood sugar is stable, they don't have cravings. Now they're no longer eating 2,000 calories worth of pizza while they're sitting there playing, video games with their kid at night. This is real world stuff. And I tell people, if they can do that, then you can do it. So it definitely helps out in that realm.
No, agreed. I'll take a little side tangent. One of the things, so chocolate peanut butter bars, personal favorite. I'm a eat peanut butter out of the jar kind of guy. They're phenomenal. One of the things I've gotten a lot of feedback on was people putting their chocolate peanut butter bars in the freezer.
Oh yeah.
Do that.
And yeah, so two things. So this is
do that too, and they carry them in their bag.
Yep. So I'll give you two things because I agree 100% with everything Karin said. So to not rehash, I'm knocking over the background here. To not rehash that, I'll give you just a different example, right? So we have a lot of people who take those chocolate peanut butter bars and some of the other bars as well, but chocolate peanut butter is a fan favorite. Put it in the freezer, and then at night have it cold. Because even though it's frozen, it still has a soft enough consistency where you can bite it and it's not like biting a brick. It's not going to break your teeth. The other thing people do is cut them up beforehand and take a chocolate peanut butter bar, cut it into 4, 5, even 10 smaller pieces, put it in the freezer, and then that way they can just pop a little piece in their mouth as they're watching TV or they're relaxing. And it's that almost ice cream snack type thing where it's cold and it's chocolatey and it's peanut buttery. And you almost really convince yourself that it is like a little ice cream snack when it's just a UCAN bar. So
I'm wanting one right now, Joe. Your description is amazing.
I have college athletes right now whose strength coaches, whose nutritionists have told me that they've come in to the weight room, to their office, whatever it may be, having used that strategy and have their minds blown and been like, I thought I was eating a candy bar or a Snickers or, a ice cream bar thing, because they didn't realize how good it was and what they did when they froze it like that. So again, fan favorite right there.
These are applications like that where you can take either a UCAN bar or even, a small serving of UCAN mixed with a littler amount of liquid and use it for sports. If you happen to be someone that's watching that, maybe your kid plays a sport or maybe you are involved in sports that last all day long. So we're talking about applications and how we would use it for these things. Most athletes, except for maybe football players and a couple others, they just like to feel light on their feet. They don't want to feel weighed down by some, heavy meal or whatever before they go out. They want to have something adequate fuel source that they know that's going to get them by. But they don't want to be all sloshy, heavy feeling, crampy, those sorts of things. And now you put that towards an athlete that does a type of all-day competition, whether it's, golf, gymnastics, figure skating, MMA, taekwondo, boxing. Like, these are things where they might be in there all day. They have no idea, many of them, when their next event is going to be. Do I have 30 minutes or do I have an hour and a half or 2 hours? And this is where UCAN has been such a beautiful application for these kind of situations where they just don't know and they still need steady energy and still need to be light on their feet. I mean, even hockey players, which I worked for 2 years in professional hockey, they just like to get out on the ice feeling light on their feet and able to really be agile and perform well. So the bars and also the powders, which last a little bit longer than the bars, those are two really great options for people.
Karin, I have a question for you. You mentioned it, and we're starting to see it in the college sector a lot, where some of the weight cutting or weight management sports, wrestling particularly, really UCAN has really taken off in collegiate wrestling recently. Quite a few teams, quite a few individuals. So how would you recommend using UCAN as part of a weight cut for, whether it's combat sports? I mean, obviously I'm referencing specifically collegiate wrestling. How have you used it, or how do you recommend using it the day you have to weigh in? That's kind of a huge question I get now because we're getting so big in wrestling.
We're looking at hopefully that the athlete has kept their nutrition in check and their weight somewhere around what they want to be. I know we've all probably worked with athletes who, they say, oh, I want to, lose 20 pounds and go down, compete down. Like, okay, well, that's not necessarily healthy when your competition is in 2 weeks and you're trying to lose 20 pounds. Like, you can do it, but are you going to perform well? So hopefully they've kept somewhere within the range of 3 to 5% of where they're going to be competing at. And again, this is very specific, but this is the world kind of where they live in. And if you can, then we're looking at 2 weeks out. Start it with UCAN. I recommend it twice a day. I think that it's not only does it give you stable blood sugar and help you just perform better, you're killing your workouts. You're still having amazing workouts, even though you're cutting the rest of your carbs in your diet. So this is a huge application. I've had a lot of athletes who then they come within about a pound of where they should be before a day or two before that weigh-in, and all the pressure is off of them. And it's because they've still had killer workouts, because they've still had energy, stable energy from UCAN, but they're still cutting at the same time that they're performing. And then they go into it with that mental edge that is absolutely, it demolishes their opponents. So the first thing, though, that you have to have with your athletes is trust. They have to trust you when you say that this is going to work, that it's a carb that's not going to put a ton of weight on you. And if you can get that trust, you'll have that athlete forever on using UCAN habitually. And I'm so excited that you mentioned that it's so popular in wrestling, because I wish that all other weight class sports and also aesthetic sports such as gymnastics, figure skating, etc., were also using UCAN in that application, and not to be afraid of using it there.
No, and to tag along to that, I've had a few people on social media who are figure, fitness, and physique reach out to me on Instagram and talk about ways to use it because they've heard or seen of us. They've seen, your podcasts and webinars, my stuff. They've heard from other people in other sports who they know. And, it's starting to get a little traction there. So I think definitely someone somewhere will be interested in using it for weight cutting, weight management in those type of situations.
I'm so happy that you mentioned social media, by the way. So I'm going to put a little plug in there for social media, because we have a team of people at UCAN that do work our social media. And I would love, we just talked about recipes. If anybody has recipes out there that you just want to share with the world, we love pictures too. Who doesn't? Videos are great. Instagram, we're constantly, and I'm adding recipes to Instagram too. So if you have a recipe, I'll give you a shout out. I'll re-Instagram it, put it up on there, Twitter, Facebook. So we're very active. We have a very active culture and community at UCAN, and we want to engage with you. So, and most of those accounts, you can find us at Gen UCAN. And obviously Generation UCAN on Facebook and Generation UCAN on YouTube. So definitely reach out to us, share on social media, and we like to give the love back. So sorry, I cut you off, Zach.
No. I just wanted to really quickly touch on a point you mentioned, which was about the mental aspect of it, and stable blood sugar is able to create that mental stability. And you brought up a lot of different sports, the figure skating, the gymnastics, and I think in running, you see how Meb was able to win the Boston Marathon in 2014 at 39 years old. Just you were able to see him win at 39, and I think nutrition was such a testament to his longevity.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned all these other sports, the hockey, the figure skating, and I've been watching the winter. Well, we just got done watching the Winter Olympics, the curling and everything. You've worked with Olympians. At what point is nutrition, the biggest factor in becoming at that high level? I mean, what are they doing that the elite athlete, but not the Olympian, might be doing?
Olympians are really, they're an interesting animal because they live and work amongst us, even though they're superheroes. So they, lots of them have regular jobs and they're paying out of pocket to travel and make it to our U.S. Olympic training facilities. And they don't have a lot of expendable income. So when they use UCAN, I know that they really mean it. They really want it, because it's something where they're learning how to eat in general, and they should. They need to eat like an Olympian, nice clean foods, all the things that I mentioned before. But on top of that, what supplements can they use in order to get that edge? Well, first of all, not very many, because there's so many that can be, if it's a true supplement, that you don't want to test positive for things. And UCAN being a food source that still gives them a beautiful source of energy, it's a win-win for them, and it's a no-brainer for them, and they feel confident using UCAN. And I know when they do that they're really dialed in. We have a really an amazing high performer swimmer, Michael, that we work with at UCAN, and you guys are going to see more of him. And he, swimming is a perfect application for UCAN. I mean, these are also people that they don't want to feel sloshy, crampy, or weighed down in the pool, and they're competing for hours and hours. So these are just ways. And besides the fact, I don't know if you know this, Zach, but I've traveled around the world with UCAN. I've worked with some soccer teams in South America and some of the top World Cup soccer teams down there, and they've actually seen my UCAN and asked me about it, and ended up stealing some of my UCAN and tried it themselves. And it's been fantastic for them. So it's something that's easy to travel with as well. And Joe, you mentioned the PB2. These two things are super light that you can carry with you. So I never, ever, ever travel anywhere without my UCAN on board, because it's so light and easy to travel with. And not just the bars, but the powders too, and mostly in the packets. But if you have a tub, you can take a scoop away.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, those are all such great different applications for UCAN, and hearing those stories are great. And that's what I think just makes UCAN so amazing, is all the different stories that we have. We have Amy, who just ran the 7 marathons in 7 different continents in 7 different days. We have Sue, who's been battling Crohn's disease her whole life and found UCAN as an instrument to run New York Marathon a couple months ago. The stories we always hear are so uplifting and so inspiring. And it's so great to see that they come from everywhere, from running to figure skating. And it's just great to see how inspired we can get. So while I have you two here right now, just if we can, going off that, our UCAN community and how we can inspire more, I could ask you just a couple quick rapid fire questions. So Joe, right now, what's your favorite workout? What would you recommend is your favorite workout right now?
The favorite thing I like to do is squat, and squat heavy for a lot of volume. So when you finish, you can't really walk straight and your legs hurt walking up and down stairs. And I've always squatted. I've been pretty good biomechanically squatting. And it's just one of those things. It's just a testament to, are you willing to suffer and make yourself have the shaky leg syndrome and not be able to walk up and down stairs for 4 days if you can get after it. So if there's one thing I have to do to get after it, it's squat, and squat a lot.
Hey, no deadlifting? What's wrong with the deadlifting?
Nothing's wrong with deadlifting. I'm just a better squatter than a deadlifter. I have some herniated discs from sports injuries over time, so I can still squat. So I squat when I can, and I get after it.
Awesome.
And Karin, you mentioned before, bikini season's coming up. It's beach season. So we have all these different fad diets that you hear every day, the beach body, the 30-day, the 80-day, that's going to get you shredded and have a washboard six-pack abs.
Detox tea, Karin. It's all about detox tea.
Right.
What's your favorite, diet right now? What's something that might work out of all these
first of all,
crazy things?
yeah, and we have to be careful with the word diet because we're talking about a lifestyle. So if it's not worth doing for a lifetime, it's not worth doing for a day. So you really need to consider, there is a lot out there on the Mediterranean diet, kind of towards the way that I eat as well, which is high fish diet, high fiber from vegetables, and healthy grains and healthy fats. So, that is very applicable to many athletes, but you can't put one diet or one meal plan or lifestyle on every single person out there. Again, it's not cookie cutter. So I know a lot of people in our world do keto as well. And where it has amazing applications, it might not be for everyone all the time for a lifetime. So lots of people will cycle on and off of it and use UCAN as well on not only Mediterranean or paleo or keto or many different meal plans. So it has its application, and that's my short answer.
And Joe, is there a resource or a book right now that you're reading that you could recommend? Any good tidbits or books out there right now you can think of that our listeners might want to know?
One of my favorite books, and it's not just about training, it's kind of a bigger topic, is a book called Leadership Conversations. And it starts as you're a worker for someone and kind of finishes as you're the CEO. So I was fortunate to be gifted that book a long time ago. And every time I read it, more of the book makes sense to me, because as I move through my professional journey in different roles, I can relate to and understand more of the book. So that's just something I've given that book as a gift probably to 24 people. I think the book Leadership Conversations is a must read for anyone at any level, because no matter when you read it, something will be applicable.
And Karin, what's one of your favorite quotes or a quote that you want to share with everyone?
Oh, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. It's Wayne Gretzky, the great one.
Awesome. Thank you, Karin. Thank you, Joe, for being with us today. You can follow them on Instagram, Twitter. You can follow Joe at UCANJoe. You can follow Karin at Karin Hosenfeld on Twitter. And you have an Instagram, Karin?
You know what? I am actually doing the Generation UCAN Instagram. So you'll find me on there, and also Facebook. You can see my Facebook lives on the Generation UCAN Facebook page. And again, we love interactions. So when I do them, even if it's not live on there, I do go back and read them. So definitely reach out.
Great. And thank you again. I'm sure people loved hearing your insights and your expertise. If you are listening live right now, you can use the code on our website, generationyoucan.com. If you go to the store, use the code UCANTALK, UCANTALK. That's going to get you a nice little discount code to try out some of the UCAN products that Joe and Karin mentioned. And if you're really ambitious, you can even try out Joe's shake. I hope you took notes. He's only going to share it once. It might appear on our social media where you can talk to Karin.
You have to do that. Yeah, you have to do that.
Thank you very much for being with us today. If you have any questions, reach out to us on Facebook, reach out to us on email, reach out to us on social media. We will get back to you. We love hearing your insight. We love hearing your questions, and we love having our great community. Thank you very much for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Good night, everybody.